Well, as harvest begins, the fertilizer spreaders start moving back to the field to replenish the soil with plant nutrients. But how many nutrients do you put back in the ground?
Yep, that's the whole question. How do fertilizer dealers figure it out? How do farmers figure it out? What do you put out there? Well, let's just talk a little bit about what we do on our farm and how we figure some of these things out.
Well, first of all, when you're taking a crop off, you need to look at how many nutrients are really leaving the field. So for example, when you harvest a 200 bushel corn crop, you need to look at when those 200 bushels go in the truck, how many pounds of nutrients are there in those bushels.
Yeah, and we have charts that help us figure out, or basically tell us, okay, if you have this many bushels, this is how many pounds of nitrogen, this is how many pounds of phosphorus, this is how many pounds of potassium actually leave the field with that grain. And the grain is one thing, stover is the next thing. Like we're in this wheat field right now and you can see these windrows of stover. They're gonna get baled up and taken off the field too. So in this particular field, we gotta look at grain plus stover and all those nutrients that are leaving the field.
The next thing that you need to look at is what your goals are for next year, what types of crops you're going to raise. If you're raising a different crop, perhaps the nutrient needs are a little different. So when you're looking at a soybean crop, for example, it has much different nutrient needs than a grass crop like corn or wheat. So take a look at which crop is going in. Maybe you need to put some different nutrients out there for that crop.
The next step is to actually do soil testing out in the field. Take a sample in the top 6 inches, the next 6 inches, the next 6 inches down, and the 6 inches deeper than that. So we're running 0 to 6, 6 to 12 inch, 12 to 18, and 18 to 24. And the reason why we do that is if we start getting roots growing down deeper in the soil, which is what we're trying to do, we want to make sure that we have some nutrients down there to feed that crop later in the summer when it's dry in the top few inches and there's still moisture down deeper in the soil. It's great that the plant can pull in that moisture, but when it's pulling in the moisture, it needs nutrients as well. And you know, the other thing we've talked about, fertilizer and nutrients, think of it this way, it's food for plants. That's how I explain it to my kids anyway. It's just food for plants. That's what we're talking about here. And the food that plants need are not only things like nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, but also some what we call micronutrients where they just need a tiny bit, but we've got to have it. Things like zinc and boron, copper, manganese, all those nutrients are really important to crops. And like in the field we're in now with wheat, sulfur is really important as well.
Well, the soil testing that you're talking about doing is really important to know what the ground has, but it's also nice to know what that crop is going to be able to extract from the ground. So just because there are certain nutrients present in the ground doesn't mean that your crop's going to get them. So what we do on our farm is we also do tissue sampling in the season. So during the growing season with this wheat crop that we just raised, we were out pulling some samples of plant tissue throughout the year, like once a week, and just seeing what the crop was able to pull out. So for example, our parts per million on potassium are really good in this field, and we say, wow, we shouldn't have any problem with potassium. There's lots of it out there. The problem is our crop isn't able to extract all of the potassium that's in the ground. So we have to see, are we getting enough into the plant, or is there a little shortage that we need to supplement with more plant food?
So once again, it is a little bit complicated, but we look at what the crop has just taken off the field, what the next crop is going to need, what the soil test says, and what our past history has been from plant tissue samples. We weigh all those factors together, and then we say this is how much plant food we actually need. And by the way, that bill is getting pretty big, but that's just the way it is. It's part of farming anymore. In this particular field, if we're going to plant corn here the next year, we'll probably spend $400 an acre for plant food just to feed next year's crop.
Well, when you're spending all that money on plant food, you don't want to have to give up any of that food to weeds. We'll show you how to kill this tough weed later in the show.